So people in the South have way worse credit scores on average than people in the North. Why is that the case? And what does it say about our political system nowadays? Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also a lawyer and an academic, and I'm here to help you stand up to the BS of the MAGA crowd. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, who of course represents a red area in a red, although trending more blue or at least purple, state in the South, proposed that there should be a national divorce separating the red states from the blue states. Now, my wife, I have to say, is somewhat ambivalent about this idea because she's kind of tired of the constant fighting with red states trying to determine what kind of policies we're going to have in the blue states. But, the problem remains, how do you divide some states? I mean, Michigan, although it's more and more of a blue state, at times it has been a red state, up until very recently. Georgia, of course, is it a red state or a blue state? And then even within red states, say the reddest of states like Tennessee, Montana, or West Virginia, all of them have blue counties and at a minimum have blue voters. Are we going to say that those people don't deserve the kind of protection we provide to people who happen to live in red states? But beyond that, most people who've analyzed the situation have come to agreements that the red states would be substantially worse off in such a divorce than would the blue states. I mean, after all, the blue states are the ones with the best economies, the most economic activity, the most educated people. And so as Joy Reid pointed out in her response to Marjorie Taylor Greene's proposal, a national divorce would destroy red states. Let's count the ways. Well, as it turns out, we've now got another way that red states are lagging behind blue states, and it's in credit scores. This was kind of a surprising result that showed up in a recent economics paper, which produced this map. And you can see very clearly where the highest credit scores are, which are the blue areas, and where the lowest credit scores are, which are the red areas. How can that be? Could it be because of demographics? Could it be because of income? I mean, you would think that people living in some of these blue areas here on the West Coast or in the Northeast, dealing with very high living costs, would have worse credit scores than those down here in blue states with lower costs of living. Well, at least part of the solution, or at least part of the answer to that question, involves healthcare bills. As we know, part of the Affordable Care Act included medical coverage for poorer citizens, and the way it accomplished that was through Medicaid. Now, Medicaid is a program that's largely financed by the federal government, but is administered by the states. Unfortunately, due to the peculiarities of our federal system, states had the option of either accepting this federal assistance and expanding Medicaid, or rejecting it, which, frankly, rejecting it seems absurd. I mean, why would a state say, we don't want federal money because it might help people in our state? Might it be something ideological? At this point, I've gotten tired of trying to understand why conservatives do what they do, except within the context of really just being mean. Well, as it turns out, if you check out the map that shows where states did accept the federal Medicaid funding versus those that didn't, there's a pretty high correlation between those states where it was not accepted and lower credit scores. Now, as a former bankruptcy attorney, I can tell you that despite claims that, people engage in fraud to commit bankruptcy, fraud in the bankruptcy process is vanishingly small. Maybe not as small as voter fraud, but pretty small nonetheless. After all, we have lots of guardrails and processes to make sure the process is protected. And according to research largely done by Elizabeth Warren, interestingly enough, there are 3 primary reasons that people declare bankruptcy. One would be the loss of a job or the failure of a business. The second would be divorce. The reality is, unfortunately, that divorce creates real economic hardship, typically on the women and the children left behind. And finally would be healthcare bills. Now, this is a uniquely American problem, almost as unique as the frequent mass shootings we have here. Because just like how in most developed countries, guns are very hard to come by, except in the United States, in most developed countries, they basically have universal health care, again, except in the United States. So the idea that an illness could leave you in a position where you're bankrupt is something that is completely beyond the comprehension of people in most countries. Unfortunately, not here, and we can see the ramifications in these credit scores. Now, clearly, this theory does not completely explain the situation because, of course, we do have some lower credit scores, for example, in California, and some higher credit scores in Florida and Texas. So at least part of the explanation has to be that bluer areas tend to be populated with more educated individuals who are likely better at handling their money, as well as also being populated with higher income individuals. Nevertheless, it seems that this is at least part of the solution. And it just speaks to the fact that people living in so many states across the country, particularly these red states, have been so fooled by appeals to their racism that they are literally voting against their own interests. There is literally no other explanation for a state not accepting free money from the federal government to provide a service that would benefit its people, other than the fact that the people who would benefit are just so distracted by appeals to their racism that they're neglecting their own pocketbooks. My hope is that President Biden's approach to governing, which he laid out in the State of the Union address, in which he's going to focus on pocketbook issues for average Americans, is going to be the kind of thing that's going to be able to help these people see how they've literally been hurting themselves by buying into this anti-woke narrative. Well, if you want to see another video where I talk about the bankruptcy process, why don't you check out this one over here that I did a little while ago, talking about Alex Jones, that MAGA conspiracy theorist who filed bankruptcy. I'll see you then. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.